I'm so pleased to be here with New York City's very own Matt Frazier, our city's Chief Technology Officer. A born and bred New Yorker, go Brooklyn. He's spent his entire career in and out of the public and private sectors. He's nearly at 20 years working in government, working to democratize technology and bring it to as many people as possible to enable stronger cities, communities, and families. So Matt, please join me and we're going to have a great conversation. This opening session, it's going to set the stage for the rest of the Metaverse Summit by discussing a wide variety of opportunities and implications for Web3 and the Metaverse initiatives from community inclusion, education, finance, economic development, and public safety. And so to begin, Matt, can you describe your role as Chief Technology Officer for the City of New York?
That was not a technology issue. No. So, morning, everyone. Guys alive? Good morning, everyone. All right. Good. So, as far too kind, I'm Matt Frazier, the Chief Technology Officer. Now, that may sound like technology. Some days it is, but in reality, what it is the city's business partner. How we leverage technology. If technology is the answer, solve some of the challenges. In most organizations, look at what technology had been. It was an administrative support function. Technology was often, the tech team was often brought in after a problem had been identified, and tech was basically used to put a Band-Aid around bad business processes. So today, when you look at the office of the CTO, what we basically focus on is looking across the city's platform, a plethora of services that it offers, and we look at how we rationalize those. And in many cases, it may require tech reform. In some cases, it doesn't. But what we're focused on is ensuring that the average New Yorker, when they interact with government, they get the best they can out of government. And that when it comes to a technology perspective, we make safe and sound investments. I mean, what you'd imagine of an entity like New York City, you have to imagine that we are over 330,000 employees. When it comes to tech assets, we're over 1 million endpoints, and that's just connected endpoints. If you think about sensors and the other tech that we operate, we are in many cases bigger than the banks. We're bigger than big tech. And in terms of what our cyber landscape looks like, I mean, we see about 80 billion cyber events weekly. So when it comes to my office, we focus on everything from setting public safety strategies of where are we going to invest? Are we going to continue to invest in things like ShotSpotter? Where's the best place to position cameras, things along that lines? We focus on looking at how we serve our constituents. Recently, we launched My City, focused on making those working families that needed access to subsidized childcare, making that process as painless as possible. And then in some cases, we look internally and look at just how we operate. Should we continue to invest in building data centers, or should we shift our assets towards the cloud? And what does that hybrid sort of approach look like? So from day to day, the job isn't any one particular thing. It can be anything across the universe of where the city operates.
Thank you, Matt. And so can you lean a little bit more into, you've had a really strong background in public safety and the security sector. And so how does that influence the way that you approach and think about your current role?
Yeah, so I think for me, when you live on the side of the world where your decisions mean life and death, right? What you really develop an affinity for is the cost of an action. Every day you don't do something, what does that actually mean to the people that you serve? And oftentimes when you find yourself in the government, you delude yourself into thinking that there's tomorrow. It's just the tech system. These decisions don't matter. It's not my money. But then when you take a step back and you look at what impact that actually drives, your decisions do matter. And a good example that have greater needs, then the overall quality of life in the city goes up. So that's pretty much the public safety side has conditioned me to think about, the cost of inaction and making sure that we focus on bringing material success today.
Excellent. And I really applaud you and Mayor Adams. A year ago, all we were hearing about every day, multiple times a day, was public safety. And the fact that we can be here, there's been a lot of advances. And we're here at a Metaverse Collaborative talking about technology is really speaks to all of your efforts. And so switching gears in terms of cities and identity and the future of technology, we often say that New York kind of likes to reinvent itself every kind of 10 to 15 years. And I think we're at a moment. And so would love to hear, Matt, your perspective on how New York City views technology in relation to its identity and its future. I know you've been doing a lot of work in terms of digital divide, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you think the future holds for us and that deep identity of New York. How is it going to be influenced by technology?
So I think that's a great question. When you look across the tech spectrum, across the global landscape, everyone knows Silicon Valley because Silicon Valley is number one in sort of tech startups, but very close behind Silicon Valley and edging ever closer every day is New York City, right? So in global startups and tech startups, New York City ranks number 2 right behind Silicon Valley. And we expect that to continue to grow. And we've seen over the last 15 months since this administration has taken its legs, that community feels empowered and they're continuing to invest and grow in New York City. When you look across the blockchain space and you look at a specific area like crypto, across last year, although crypto is a bit nebulous, anything that grows as quickly as it does, you got to expect the market to correct itself. But when you look across the U.S., over 14 billion was raised in crypto last year, and of that 14 billion, 46% of it was raised in New York City. So we are by far the fintech capital we've been, and it seems like as we move into, digital assets and we move into more, current and more modern assets, we continue to hold that spot. The next city that was closest to us was Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, in terms of capital in that end of the market, raised 3 times less than New York, and then Miami is behind Silicon Valley, and they raised 8 times less than New York. So for us, when we look at what it means to be a New Yorker, and when we look at New York's DNA, we look and we see tech as being a core part of it. So you see all of the major multinational tech organizations, whether it's Google, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Microsoft, they have a home here in New York, and they're looking to grow that footprint here. When we look at our public education system, we're looking at everything from K through 12, how can we get tech in as quick as possible so that we can continue to build on those skill sets and ensure that the workforce that comes out of New York is a modern workforce capable of jumping into the tech that's needed. And I think for us, we're really focused on rebuilding that bridge between government and business. One of the things that we heard as we stepped in was during the last administration, we had lost focus on the live in the city. So I think across the landscape, there's many across the global landscape, there's many examples of those that have made progress around stemming the digital divide. And I think that in New York City, we would not be serving our constituents, especially those that are economically challenged, unless we take the right steps to make sure that broadband is available both in your home and outside.
So we've certainly been inspired by looking at what Estonia is doing, kind of economic development, amazing. In a country of 1 million, it's pretty incredible what one can do. But we've been really inspired by them, by the economic development in Singapore. Could you speak a little bit about how Web3 and metaverse technologies could be used to optimize government effectiveness? You've talked a bit about kind of what that looks like for communities, for individuals, but what does that look like for doing business with government?
Yeah, so I think for us, when we look at places like Estonia and Singapore, you just have to understand that the models are completely different. And in order to make some of the progress and some of the change that they have been able to do so quickly, having significant amount of authority gives you the ability to do that. But when we look at technology, we try to make decisions and we try to make investments based on what's the best thing for the city, not the most attractive thing from a market or a tech perspective. And when we look across the scale and span of Web3 related technologies, some of our most basic challenges, if we could solve some of those leveraging blockchain, would be great. The biggest things that come to mind are like vital records management. It's like the fact that, any of you that's purchased a home You know the process of hiring a company to make sure that the deed and the property actually belongs to the person that's selling it to you, right? Now, as custodian of a lot of these records, wouldn't it be great if we could leverage Web3 based tech so that when someone wants to validate that, you could do that validation in real time by a public authority and skip the step of paying someone to do that. Very similarly, looking at how we manage digital identity. Some of the challenges that we have, you can imagine across the government space, there's lots of benefits that we coordinate. So imagine you being your working family and you appear in front of the Department of Social Services and you need food benefits, you need transit benefits, you need a bunch of these other things. In order to get those, in one place you get an EBT card, in another place they send you a paper check, in another place they send you an actual reduced fare Metro card. How great would it be if we can unify all that around a digital identity, around a digital wallet, and to ensure that those transactions are protected, they're safe, they're secure, but also you get incentivized by doing, by getting more healthy behavior. So one of the things that the mayor's talked about a bit is looking at the concept of bringing a digital wallet for New Yorkers. So if you receive public benefit or public aid, and you are, and you've been historically locked out, the unbanked and underbanked community, we give you a means where you can enter with very minimal requirements. And then with that, create programs where we can create incentives around how you leverage that. So some of the things we've been looking at of late is like if you go into the grocery store and you have a digital wallet and you buy something like water, fruits, vegetables, right, more healthy decisions, how can the government do point incentive matching on that sort of behavior versus if you buy sugary drinks or snacks? And I think when we look at Web3 and we look across the landscape, like those are the things that we see as tangible, real things that we can deliver quickly on that will have a tremendous impact on our communities.
Excellent. So I'm going to look around. I feel like I could sit here all day asking you questions. We have time for a couple more questions. I'm seeing no one saying no, so we're going to keep going. Okay. Can we go back to New York City as a fintech capital in the world? What does that look like to you? What most excites you about entrepreneurship or bringing more capital in? What would it take for us to really be a fintech capital of the world? And again, with so many other cities here in the audience, would love your insights on what that might look like.
So I don't think we have to try to be the fintech. I think we already are, right? So when you look at from the point that there were computers, New York City's played a central role in the global financial market, and then we expect that to continue. But what we're most excited about in terms of entrepreneurship and opportunities in New York is when you look across the US landscape, a lot of business opportunities, a lot of employment is driven by our small business community. And we have a lot of talent that's built locally in New York, and we want to make sure that that talent, as it develops, it has a place to actually grow. What we saw across our business communities is like in New York, we have New Lab as one of the biggest tech incubators in the city. But there are very few programs that focus on talent or products that are built in New Lab growing in New York City. So what I'm hopeful about is building pipeline programs where of the $100 billion that we have in annual spend, which makes New York City's budget, we can direct some of that capital to businesses that are building in New York. So if you build local and you have products that are built local, why can't the government buy local? So that's some of the things that we're evaluating. In addition to that, we are very, very hopeful that we'll continue to see the type of economic growth that we've seen. I mean, certainly post-pandemic, the world has not normalized, and we're looking for that to continue to happen in New York City. And to do that, that requires business growth. It requires people to trust the city is the right place for them to be. And across the administration, we've shown that we're not only about building small businesses, but we're also about backing small businesses. So we want to continue to do that. So I'm very hopeful.
Excellent. Thank you. So I think, many, many mayors have been sort of dogged by the notion of a tale of two cities, right? Yeah. Where we have a really sophisticated city that is kind of a global capital, but then we have communities that are perennially overlooked. And so and you've been sharing some of the ideas on how to make sure that we don't skip over lower income and under-resourced communities, but could you give some specific examples on how Web3 and the metaverse and education can very concretely touch communities that have been, typically under-resourced and less lower wealth and kind of lower economic opportunity?
Yeah, sure. So when you look at the evolution of the Web3 tech across the U.S. market, and you look at where things like crypto really emerged, it was in minority communities, those that had likely been locked out of the traditional banking system. Now, barrier for entry for them may have been significant, but getting a crypto wallet, moving whatever assets that you had into it and being able to trade was somewhat liberating. So for us, when we look at what we can do to help communities that historically have been left behind, I mean, there's a number of things that we have to focus on, but some things are, you'd be surprised, as I mentioned, like 40% of our public housing community didn't have access to broadband. So it's interesting that we look at the question of like, how can Web3 help when they're not even connected communities? So for us, I think we focused our first year, and this is one of the things that we took a lot of pride in. We take a lot of pride in. We focused our first year in looking at those that had the greatest need. I think it'd be no surprise to you that the communities that also are the least connected communities are also the communities that have some of the worst health conditions and also some of the worst violence conditions. So when we look at broadband and we look at it unilaterally as just a tech thing, we miss an opportunity to see what broadband's impact is on public health and on public safety. And there haven't been many studies that's been done to look at that. But one of the things that we want to make sure is in the communities that are the most affected by the challenges I mentioned, we want to make sure that we bring those up. So in the first year, we launched Big Apple Connect, and now across 95% of public housing, broadband will now be available like heat and hot water. In addition to that, we've continued to push our expansion of public space Wi-Fi. Like in New York City, we operate the largest municipal wireless broadband network. So as you walk out into the street right now, you can connect to one of over 2,000 or 3,000 kiosks, so you can get access to free broadband services. In addition to that, we've launched gigabit centers, one in each borough, to stimulate growth and activity from an education perspective. Some of these centers focus in the communities, focus as a hub of learning, and a couple of them, they have programs that are focused exclusively on Web3, blockchain, digital assets, and how you build dexterity in that space. Broadband is like a so what moment. It's like, you have it, now what? We need to build programs where you can build skills that leverage that access. So what I'm hopeful for is the great thing about technology is across the world, it's known as like the great equalizer. And if we can provide access to the tools where communities can build pathways out of poverty, like that's the magic. And that's where we're really going to focus. So I think in those communities, broadband, skills training, device access programs, and also giving them pathways to employment, and where Web3 can be leveraged, helping build dexterity there, future-proofing those that are looking to grow in the tech space. I think that's where we'll continue to focus.
It's great. I know we've been really excited and enthusiastic about the creative economy, creator economy, and just being able to bring voice to folks in communities and doing so in a way that both puts money in their pocket, but builds them skills and really future-proofs them. So last question, what words of advice would you give to city leaders who are here today and who are watching us on live stream as they contemplate their Web3 strategies?
So be smart. Right, be smart. One of the things that I say in cities like New York, or for New York in particular, there are many cities that when it comes to this particular space, they have nothing to lose. I mean, nothing reputationally. And New York, because we're known as the fintech capital, if we don't make sound decisions in terms of, and fintech is only one side of Web3, but if we don't make sound decisions on how we emerge in any of these spaces, then it puts us in a position where a lot of our credibility will be called into play. We look at cities across across the U.S. where they've built their own versions of tokens and coins, and many of which are now defunct, right? And in New York City, we refused to enter into a market until we were sure it was the right thing for us. When we look at the metaverse, there's plenty of opportunities of how we can grow, build on that digital experience. I mean, when I look at it, like, think about kids these days, right? And you think about the concept of the metaverse and what that actually means for connectedness. Like more kids today are built having social and emotional connections and reactions digitally than they are in person. Like any of you who have school age kids, I'm pretty sure your kids have a Roblox account. And like what they're asking for for their birthday or around holiday seasons isn't, they're not asking for toys or clothes, they're asking for Robux, right? And the fact that when you look at some of the retail market and you look at places like Gucci where you buy items in Gucci, you can redeem those same items and get tokens for them in the metaverse. It just shows you the direction that the world is trending in. So as those that serve in the public space, just being conscious of how the market is emerging, don't be very fast to adopt the trends, and look to make smart decisions around what best serves your constituency. And don't let external pressures in terms of another city did this or another place did this or another country's doing this drive you to make irrational decisions.
Excellent note to end on. Thank you so much. Let's give Matt a round of applause.
Thank you.
So you definitely have set the stage well for this summit for the next couple of days, where we're going to be really looking at issues that are quite expansive, from public safety to education to community inclusion. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure.